Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Robert O'Donnell? He was one of the paramedics who rescued Jessica McClure, who was better known as Baby Jessica. Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. So first I'll look at the background in this case, including the rescue of baby Jessica, then offer my analysis. On October 14, 1987, an 18-month-old girl named Jessica McClure was on her aunt's property in Midland, Texas, when she fell into a well in the backyard. She was over 20 feet down. Rescuers from the area were on the scene quickly, but the rescue was very difficult and taking a long time. This takes us to the background of Robert O'Donnell. Robert married his high school sweetheart, Robbie Martin, and they had two sons, Casey and Chance. Robert coached soccer for a team that Casey played for. Robert had occasional migraines, raced motorcycles, and liked Dr. Pepper. He was considered an ordinary guy in most ways, but as far as his training, he was a little unusual. Robert was a firefighter who also had paramedic training, one of only a few in that area to have such training. As I mentioned, Jessica had fallen in that well on October 14. On October 15, the rescue was still underway. Robert had just gone off duty. Believing he could help with the rescue, he made his way to the scene. He had to fight through a lot of other rescuers, bystanders, and reporters. The rescuers were still working diligently. They had inserted a hose into the well to deliver oxygen to Jessica. There was another hose to blow in heated air, and they put a microphone down the well so they could hear her. Around the time that Robert arrived on the scene, the rescuers had drilled a vertical shaft 29 feet down. Their next task was to drill a horizontal shaft 5 feet over to where Jessica was. The top of the well was lined with an 8-inch pipe, but below that the well was made of rock. Both drills and jackhammers bounced off the rock, as if they were encountering steel. The rock was dulling the diamond-tipped drill bits. Eventually, a mining engineer arrived on the scene and helped with the rescue effort by introducing water jet cutting to get through the rock. This technology was relatively new in 1987. The rescuers were successfully able to cut through the rock and create that horizontal tunnel. What they needed at this point was somebody to navigate the tunnel and free Jessica from the well. They selected Robert O'Donnell because he was 6 foot tall, but only 145 pounds. He agreed to go in even though he was claustrophobic. At about noon on October 16, Robert entered the cross tunnel. He would encounter Jessica a few moments later. He could see her one leg dangling down, but her other leg was wedged near her head, almost like she was in a split. Robert concluded that Jessica probably didn't have any spinal injuries. He tried to pull her out, but she was really stuck in there. He knew he would have to leave so the other rescuers could widen the tunnel. Physicians on the scene were not too thrilled about the idea of Robert going in a second time. They said he was too distraught, but Robert indicated he wanted to try again. On a second try, he successfully extricated Jessica from the bottom of the well. He maneuvered her out of a cross tunnel and into the vertical shaft, where another paramedic, Steve Forbes, grabbed a hold of her. The rescuers lifted Stephen and Jessica up the shaft. Robert stayed underground for a few moments, collecting his thoughts. He had never been involved in a rescue that was this high profile. Millions of people had watched the rescue on television. During the final minutes of the rescue, 3.1 million households were watching on CNN alone. Jessica was taken to the hospital. She had 6 surgeries for damage to her head and her right foot. Eventually, her little toe was amputated. Jessica was there for 36 days. During that time, she received thousands of gifts, like stuffed elephants and bears, flowers, balloons. A trust fund was established for Jessica. The Pope invited her to the Vatican. The Walt Disney Company sent a 5-foot-tall Winnie the Pooh, probably because Jessica sang a song about Winnie the Pooh when she was in the well. Governor Mario Cuomo sent a stuffed beaver, which is New York's official animal. Someone sent a waterbed. Someone else sent a puppy. Again, there was just a lot of gifts coming to Jessica. Jessica was not the only person in the spotlight. Robert O'Donnell, Steve Forbes, and others involved in the rescue were being showered with media attention and gifts. Robert was invited to the White House. Oprah Winfrey brought her show to Midland, Texas, and invited him as a guest. The rescuers had become so famous that they formed two rival associations to deal with the incoming offers from movie producers. No one really questioned that the firefighters and paramedics were heroes, but some were critical of other people who were honoring themselves for their contribution to the rescue. People wondered if some of them had really even been a part of the rescue operation at all. For example, some of the reporters who covered the story said that because they had to go for more than 2 days without sleep, they were experiencing mental health symptoms, like hallucinations. They wanted to be recognized as heroes for not sleeping and for having the symptoms, which indicates their common sense was buried deeper than the well from which Jessica was rescued. It was a contentious time. Some of the people involved in the rescue were afraid that they would not be able to maximize its financial value, but they were telling people that they were trying to protect the integrity of the story. Robert asked a few people about assisting him in getting his autobiography published. The public, which had been so generous to Jessica, started to churn on her parents. There were rumors suggesting that they were spending all Jessica's money. They were buying Rolls Royces and Mercedes. None of this was true. In reality, Jessica's money was in a trust which was controlled by a local bank. Her parents didn't have access to it. Perhaps partially due to the stress of all the negative attention, the couple divorced in 1990 and would both eventually marry other people. The public didn't churn on Robert O'Donnell, but he was having difficulty in his relationships. His coworkers grew tired of hearing him talk about the rescue all the time. They thought the media had unfairly singled Robert out as a hero. People would see him walking down the street and turn around and walk the other way. The fire chief Robert worked for told Robert to climb off of the pedestal before he fell. He warned Robert that he could not make a living as America's hero. Life goes on. Go on with yours. Robert's marriage started to disintegrate as he continued to focus on fame. When he would meet people, he would wait for them to recognize him. Every now and then they would, but typically they would not. At this point he would say, "You might recognize me from the Baby Jessica rescue." One thing I find interesting here is that this line, "You might recognize me from," was made famous by a character on The Simpsons named Troy McClure, who was famously played by the late Phil Hartman. Jessica's last name was McClure, so Troy McClure and Jessica McClure. This is one of those coincidences that doesn't really mean anything, but I thought it was interesting. Robert was hopeful that he could turn his heroic actions into something more impressive. He had aspirations to be a legend. He told friends that he wanted to break into the entertainment industry. Acting, public relations, talk shows, he would do anything to remain in the spotlight. Robert was not able to fulfill his dreams. He was never able to publish a book about his life. As it turns out, no one really cared about that. The movie deal didn't work out too well either. It turned out to be a made-for-TV movie titled Everybody's Baby, which aired in May of 1989. Robert was the only rescuer to get a part in the movie. He played a reporter. It was a brief, non-speaking role. He sat down to watch the movie with his family. He excitedly repeated the phrase, "Here comes my part," but his part never came. Robert had never been told that his part had been eliminated from the movie. He was devastated. This seems like an unfair action on the part of the production company, but maybe they just needed those few seconds off the runtime. I don't know what their reasoning was. Robert had migraines on occasion before the incident, but after the media attention died, he had them every day. He couldn't stop thinking about the rescue. He told his mother, "I can't stop it. I don't know what to do." He started using prescription painkillers excessively, to the point where he couldn't even talk. He also took a lot of aspirin, so much that his stomach bled. His wife asked him to move out in April of 1991 after finding him passed out in the house. He also passed out at work and was sent to a rehabilitation facility. In August of 1992, he quit his job after refusing to take a drug test. Functionally, he was fired for using drugs. He ended up moving in with his mother. Robert searched for another job. He forwarded resumes packed with all his awards for rescuing Jessica to several fire departments. None of them responded. He ended up taking a job as a driver for a prison in Huntsville, Texas in the summer of 1993. After overdosing, the police took him to a rehabilitation facility. He briefly had an interest in becoming a drug counselor. He took a few courses. Eventually, he found work with an asbestos removal company in Lubbock, Texas. His life seemed to be getting back on track. The Oklahoma City bombing occurred on April 19, 1995. Watching the coverage on TV, Robert noted to his mother that the first responders would need years of counseling. Late on April 23 or early on April 24, Robert retrieved a .410 gauge shotgun and left 3 notes next to the coffee table in his mother's residence. One said, quote, "No help from nobody but family," unquote. He then drove his pickup about 15 miles away and pulled down a small road on a ranch. He removed his straw hat and used a black marker to write the words, "To Chance," in the lining, to indicate he was leaving that hat to his son. Robert used the shotgun to bring an end to his life. He was 37 years old. This was his 3rd attempt. He had tried twice before using pills. The authorities would find his body at 8:30 a.m. on April 24, 1995. Now moving to my analysis. Everybody who worked to rescue Jessica McClure was a hero. Even though Robert's contributions were amazing, he could not have saved her without being part of a team. The media focused on certain people as being more heroic. Unfortunately for Robert, he was one of those rescuers who was selected by the media for attention. What's more, as his fellow firefighters turned down interviews, Robert kept saying yes. He talked to everybody in the media every time they wanted him to. What do I think happened in this case? What happened to Robert O'Donnell? I think this is a story of parallel forces. On the one side, Robert may have developed PTSD from the rescue itself. Independent of the stress of the media coverage, he had recurring thoughts about the rescue. He replayed it in his mind thousands of times. In addition, he had migraines since about age 8 or 9, which only became worse after the rescue. He took prescription pills to alleviate the symptoms and just spiraled downward. On the other side of the story would be Robert's reaction to the media coverage. It seems clear that Robert was much too invested in fame and did not understand that it would fade quickly. He thought that because the media paid a lot of attention to him initially, he would just continue to become increasingly popular until one day he was a movie star. At every turn, he was disappointed, with the ultimate insult sustained when an already small role was cut out of a made-for-TV movie. This poignantly exemplified how the media and Hollywood really felt about him. Robert had difficulty understanding how people could have been interested in the rescue at one time and then have their interest decrease. He wasn't prepared to be out of the spotlight. It may have been that the media attention helped him keep the PTSD symptoms at bay, but then when he lost that attention, he had to face the pain without any help. Here are my thoughts on the attitude many people have toward heroes, based on what we see in this case and other cases involving heroes. They want heroes to be humble in addition to being heroic. If a hero starts to see themselves as others see them, if they start to believe they are really a great person, then people start to believe they are no longer worthy of being a hero. It's like everybody in the world is allowed to believe the person is a hero, but the hero is not allowed to believe it. The recipe for a popular hero is bravery and modesty. Robert O'Donnell had the former, but he was unable to maintain the latter. I think what gets lost in this story is that Robert really was a hero. He did his job in the moment that he needed to. It was in the aftermath that his behavior deviated from the ideal. I think, in a sense, he became too dependent on fame, but then it became one drug he could no longer obtain. Those are my thoughts on the case of baby Jessica and Robert O'Donnell. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis to be informative. Thanks for watching.